All right, good morning, everyone. Um,
Good morning.
today,
Good
good morning.
morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Thank you. Today is June 16th. This is our monthly BVC meeting. I did receive, although Miss Bowden is not with us today, she did send over a few agenda items to me last night that you all would like to discuss today. And after we review those items, if there is anything else that you guys wanted to discuss during our time, um, I will be more than willing to happy to discuss. We do have Jeremy Jefferson here from the operations unit. Before we get into the agenda items, was there anything that you all needed to bring up or discuss with operations while he is with us?
Not for me.
Not for me either.
Okay.
Easy.
All right. All right, Jeremy. So thank you for joining us. If you want, you may have the rest of your time back. And if we need anything, I'll reach out and let you know. All right. So the first agenda item that I received was what happens when a vendor leaves a facility and does not pay the petty cash back in. So the practice that I'm aware of is there is a inventory in and inventory out process. Um, if you are inventoried in the amount of in access, uh, we would pay you back the difference. And if there was a difference that the vendor owed to the SLA, then the vendor would pay that difference. And that's the way that it works and should be working. In the case that someone owes the SLA and they refuse to pay or they don't pay or have some type of arrangement in place, we would collect the balance via their commissions that we would pay out. So that is how those situations are typically handled. And I don't know who actually posed the question, but I want to make sure that answer is received. Is that the
Okay.
I
same
have a
process
question.
that you know to be in the past?
Yes. Now question. I'm assuming that would be okay once the money is combined. If they don't have enough commission to give forward, how would that work? Would you make some kind of arrangements with that person or just, how would that work?
So I know when levies are due, payment arrangements are available that you can work out with the SLA. So I would, based off that information, I would think that we will also be able to work out arrangements as long as the vendor is communicating with us. I know that in the updated micro market policy, where vendors will then divide the commission up equally, everyone will be receiving those commission payments. So each vendor will be guaranteed monthly commission coming in. So if the SLA needs to recoup those funds via the commissions that's being collected and dispersed, it would then happen during that process.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Could I could I make a statement or ask a question? Both, but
Yes.
this is Marquette. Um, you mentioned that there is a procedure for what is it?
Combined
Making
macro market.
a no.
Oh, the levy
It's
payments.
about um paying back what is owed a payment plan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was in a situation where I asked for a payment plan, um, and I was told then that there was no payment plan, that I had to pay all the money back at once. And it may have been like nine, 10, $11,000 that I was forced to pay all at one time. And I have an email saying that there is no payment plan. We don't do that. And the money was taken out of um, my pension fund. And there was a payment plan, and I looked it up and stated that there was, but I was told by Mr. Amber Solar that there was not, and they took the money. So, yeah, um, he needs to be showed that there is a payment plan or was at that time, and change from the stance that he stood on back then, probably
Okay, so
about a year or so ago.
I just want to make sure that I confirm the wording correctly as it relates to the levy payment plan. So I'm just pulling up the policy on that one.
That's great. May I say something?
Yes,
When that question was asked,
On the
it was
road,
regarding the um, petty cash, and I guess the letter could be
yes.
included in it also. But the petty cash, if
yes,
a vendor leaves the location and don't have the petty cash to
yes,
return, yes, to the
yes.
agency.
Yes, we
But
were
like,
discussing petty cash, but I used an example from Levy. So that was actually number 5 on the agenda list. It said Mr. Henderson has a concern about current levy, and I'm not sure if this is that question that you were going to ask, Mr. Henderson. Um, but I was just referencing. I want.
No, it's a different question.
Okay. I think me bringing up the payment plan when I gave that example, it sparked a question based off of a past experience.
and
Yes.
I will
Hmm.
say that in the past, when I came aboard, there was arrangement for people to have payment plans.
Mhm.
Because I recall a couple of vendors who
And
had that option.
you and that's because we have to pay taxes and insurance and salaries and
Um,
inventory. And sometimes if you're not given an opportunity to pay on a payment plan or a monthly basis or whatever the arrangement is, that could hurt a vendor dearly. So if there is a payment plan or was, then it should be recognized and it should be offered to the
So,
vendor. Um,
so the policy reads under policy number 3, financial procedures. All vendors shall remit funds to cover the levy assessment as well as other SLA related debt. So other related debt, I would say, would include like petty cash, inventory out. I'm sorry, I'm just going to readmit Mario. So those things would fall under the category of other SLA related debt. All vendor debt must be paid immediately upon notification, or a payment plan must be executed within 5 business days of notification. All monthly payments must be remitted to the SLA office and endorsed to the DC Treasurer Randolph Shepherd Vending Facility Program in a form other than cash by the close of business of the 21st of each month. When the 21st falls on a holiday or weekend, the due date shall be the first business day following the 21st of the month. Vendors have the option of including their payment plan, direct payments to the SLA, deductions from their commission payments, or deduction from their annual retirement disbursement.
Correct.
So I'm not sure if the matter fell within that window of not within the 5
Yes,
business days it wasn't arranged, or where that may have fallen to say whether.
yes, yes. It was done within that window, the 5 business days. Everything was done within the policy, but then I was told that the agency didn't practice that. Even though I read it, yeah, I was told that it didn't. It could be looked up. It could be looked up, and I can provide the emails that show that I did request it within the 5 day period. Um, but still, I was denied the ability to pay.
Okay. If you can send me that information, I'm not sure what
Okay.
exactly can be done now, but I can inquire into it if you send me that information. But as I just stated, from the current policy as of 2007, that is the information that the policy reads about levy and other related debt to the SLA.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I have one more question on that. I was also asked that in the past, and I don't know if this is, in the past it said that if a vendor wasn't able to pay the petty cash, they wouldn't be allowed to bid on another facility or even work another facility. Is there anything in the policy about that?
In the current policy about if they will not be able to participate in a call down if
Right.
if they did not pay their levy. Um,
Not so much the levy. I guess it would be the
oh, if
petty
they had
cash.
okay, if they
Yes.
owe from another.
Yes. Going out of a location to go into another location.
I need to spend 1 second.
And this may be something we pick up in the policy. I don't know.
Yeah. So I was scanning the current policy before I looked at any of the things that are currently working to see whether we did. So I'm going to make a note of it because I don't want to utilize our time now to scan each document, but I will make a note to just circle back to see if there's anything in the current 2007 or in any of the working procedures that we're preparing that mentions, because I want to say that something does touch on it, but I don't want to confirm without being able to verify. So if a vendor owes from the inventory out process, will they be allowed to participate in the next call down?
Not so much the inventory out, the petty
The
cash
petty
that's
cash,
given to them. Yes.
specifically petty cash. Okay. Are you comfortable if I get back to you all with that information once I confirm it and
Yes.
to move to the next item? Thank you. Um, the second item was Ms. Pettaway. Ms. Pettaway wants to ask about third party. Did you have a specific
Okay.
question?
Yes. Yes. Say for instance, a person has a facility, a building, they're in a building, and if a third party is in that building with a micromart, will that money be included into the group money, or how will that work?
If a third party has a micro market,
In a location, say for instance, I'm in
like is it
DIA.
then related to like a direct competition?
I'm not sure.
Um,
Okay,
so I
because
know
in the
the third
letter,
party vending machines, the vendors.
you know, say if it says a micromart and it's in the building with my location, Will that money be added to the combined money that's being distributed, or will it be separate? Will it be continue to be my money?
It was a location that you were already in, and they brought in a micro market.
Yes, they brought in a micro mart, and I'm receiving vendor commission from that micro mart. I'm receiving commission from that micro mart. Now, and in the letter was restated that all all locations that's run by a third party would be combined and distributed equally. But
Right.
if the micro mart is in the building with me, would that apply to me also?
Yes, as long as it's a third party run micro market, they would all be evenly. I believe that's what happens with the unassigned commission as well, how that typically works. You guys split that evenly. So it would kind of look something like that. As long if it's not a manned market and it's run by our third party vendors, then it will all be divided equally amongst all 19 vendors.
Excuse me, this is Jerome Walker. That for that to happen, or that would have to come under a policy change, because if
Yes.
if it's my building, if the building is assigned to me, then any third parties, whoever, anything that's assigned to me, anything that building draws would come to me. That would be part of a group.
Right.
That's a difference in assigned and unassigned.
Yes, but that off the current policy, there was a procedure that went out to the vendors to review regarding the update to the micro market procedure. This was something that the BVC policy committee looked at and then was sent to the vendors at large to review before it went to HR for review as well.
I know, as a regular, I'm on the BVC. I'm also a vendor at large, and I didn't receive anything that said that's a new policy change. I didn't receive that.
This was in May. Let me see if I have. Yeah, this was done, I want to say either back in late April or early May that it may come about. I will try to find the
Okay, you can go forward. I will look also, because I'm just thinking, since Jesse brought that up. Jesse, are you there, right? Since
I'm
you brought
here,
that
yes.
question up, yeah. If you brought that question up, that means you saw something, or you on the policy that
Well,
that
someone
gave you that
called me.
understanding.
Right, someone called me regarding that, and I wasn't sure on it. That's why I brought it to. That's why I brought it to the to this meeting, because I wasn't sure on it, and I asked Jelani, and he pretty much explained it the same way Miss Payne is explaining it, but I I'm not sure on that,
looks
so
like
that's why I'm
it
asking.
went out on April the 28th. It came from Director Reese to everyone's email. Not in this BVC group, but in the policy group. It went out to them on the 28th of April. Marquette, Marie, Jesse, LaShawn. Um, the vendors in the email says last week we received communication from vendors at large regarding the micro market procedure, the suggestions that they made. So I'm assuming it went out to the vendors at large a week prior or 2 weeks prior, because there's normally a 2 week range that you get to review the document. So it probably would have went out the week of April the 6th or the 13th to the group, the vendors at large. somewhere.
I have one question
Ms.
on
Payne,
that. Now, in the
Because
right
remember,
now,
we discussed it in Mr. Henderson. You wanted to make sure we included that grandfathered in phrase about this procedure when we were speaking on it. You wanted to specifically make sure we use the word vendors will not be grandfathered in.
right, but I don't think
yes.
we thought about the fact that a vendor had it in their location, in their building. And I'm gonna be frank, I didn't
And
either until the vendor called me. Because
and if
are
I
you
may, go ahead. Excuse me.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And if I may, that's a situation that we did not look at because we weren't confronted with that issue of a location already being assigned to a vendor, and that vendor goes to work in that location every day. We were mainly speaking on people that had micro markets that they did not work. It wasn't a manned micro market,
Yeah, so the
but
manned micro
but
markets are not included in this procedure.
exactly. But those buildings that have a third party in them, a micro market in them, but say for instance, Switzer, just making an example. Just say for instance, Switzer, and I'm in the Switzer location, but there also is a third party in there as well. Basically, we did not look at that saying that, okay, we don't want these kind of situations to be included. We want those people that may have those buildings, those facilities, their micro markets not be included in that because it's already that's already their locations, and it is kind of it's not a manned micro market. It's ran by a third party, but the building a is occupied by a blind vendor. So that making it a little different, we may need to revisit that particular part of that policy and
So,
revise it the way that they're speaking on now, because we didn't give consideration to that aspect of it.
so the language on that read that third-party managed micro markets will not be assigned to individual vendors. And then it states the combined earnings from all such third-party managed facilities will be shared equally among all licensed Randolph Shepherd Vending Facility Program vendors. The SLA will make monthly payments to each Randolph Shepherd Vending Facility Program licensed vendor of an equal share of the proceeds. These funds will be paid as earnings to each vendor by the SLA in the same manner that the assigned vending income is paid. So it was very the language was very
Clear. That's clear.
clear, very
I'm sorry.
clear language. That all, like I stated, it goes to the policy and committee first, which Mr. Henderson, you're on, so we actually read these things out line by line with the policy committee meeting. We give you all times to ask questions about each line. We make suggestions, as I stated, Mr. Henderson. You were one suggested that we took and implemented in the policy about the grandfather in process. We have very thorough
Mm-hmm.
conversations before we send it through to the vendors at large, which they then have 2 weeks to review before it then goes to the HR process. So, like as stated, this is something that's been ongoing since April that has touched every vendor, and had a very adequate time for suggestions and input, which we included in the finalization of this procedure. Now, it has gone through all of the steps and it's already gone through the legal steps as well with the union and HR. I would have to see how we go about revisiting, but the language was very
Okay.
clear.
I have to say what I just heard goes with you know unassigned and assigned. So if I'm assigned to a building, that means I'm running that location, and any income that comes from that location in that location is mine alone. And what you just read, the unassigned is what's um, they're separated or it's divided amongst us equally. That's how it's been, and that's how it should be. I didn't. After that, which was just stated, that sounds clear in the way that it's been, in the way that it should be.
So the way that I read it, it pretty much reads that now the third party commission rates vending payments, the third party payments will now be handled in the same manner that unassigned commission rates are being handled. They're going to be calculated all together and then divvied equally amongst the vendors, the licensed vendors. No matter whose location it's in, no matter where it's at, if it's owned and run by a third party vendor, all of the funds will be handled very in the same manner that you're used to the unassigned commission being handled, totaled and
Okay.
divided equally amongst all vendors.
Okay.
May
So
I
that is
ask
a
a
policy
question?
change. That is a
May I
policy
ask a
change. Okay.
question?
I get it.
Yes.
In the future, maybe, is it any way possible if a person is able to, would they be able to take over those locations in their building
As a manned
and
market,
as a man, Michael Mark, and run them themselves if they have um, sufficient enough space and the capability of doing it?
so I think that will have to be looked into as how do we separate ourselves in those cases. I would think that that would mean terminating that agreement with the third party for that location,
Right.
meaning we would then have to, strip that whole thing down and rebuild our own inventory into that structure. So whatever that process looks like and whatever that process calls as far as time and money together, we would have to really just define and understand what that process looks like before we say that's what we're going to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So did anyone else have any questions or comments on that, on the third party, before we move to topic number 3?
Y- Yes, I have something I want to understand because now it seems like the SLA do have some meetings or discussions with third parties when they make these contracts. Is that the case?
I'm not, when they make the contracts, can you
Yeah, the agreement or whatever that we have with third parties or the SLA has with third parties. That's what we were talking about, right?
uh Miss Pettyway was more so asking when the third party's commission that she's used to receiving right now for the locations that are in her building specifically, when the new policy goes into effect, will she still receive that third party commission directly? So that's what she was more so touching on related to the third party
O-
vendors.
Okay, as far as the third parties and what they pay, where does that number come from?
That comes from the regulation, to my knowledge.
Not to mine. Oh, well, thank you very much because um I have noticed and I've become alarmed at some of the decisions that's being made because it seemed like there's a conflict of interest because there are certain things that the agency's supposed to advocate for vendors, But when it comes to these third parties, it seemed like whoever's doing the negotiating or contracting agreements or whatever have them more in mind than they do blind vendors.
So, in the last vendors at large meeting that we had last week, Mr. Stevenson, we did touch on the topic of the third party commission rates, and it was stated that the vendors would like to meet with a third party vendors as a follow-up meeting from the February meeting, which I did state that I was going to get in touch with those vendors to set up. I just have not have a set time and date to supply you all with that yet. But that was one of the follow-up items from the vendors at large meeting, was to have another meeting with these vendors to see if we can have the discussion about the commission rate. As of this time,
Okay.
Monumental was the only ones that kind of went back and adjusted their rates, but the other vendors were kind of still sticking to the regulation rate.
Oh,
And
okay. Thank you.
Ms.
That's I
Payne,
understand.
and
Yes,
may I say something?
yes.
And in the past, the vendors met with the third parties and renegotiated our rate with the third parties. When I came into the program, that's the way it was. The agency didn't negotiate the rate. We would have meetings at a lot of times at Thurgood Marshall, and we would negotiate with Coke and Pepsi and those to get our rate what we got it up to.
So as I stated, I am scheduling the meeting with the third party vendors. Once I have a date and a time, all vendors are welcome to join in the meeting in the discussion about the requested change of the vendor rates. But I just don't have a set date and time to tell you when that will happen. But you are more than willing, all vendors are more than willing to participate in the conversation.
Well, see, that's just the point. It shouldn't be that we're willing. It shouldn't be a meeting without us. Not that we're willing. It shouldn't be a meeting without our representation.
Okay.
That's one of the differences. Because,
And I agree with that because I put that question to Mrs. Van Roach when she was here, and she said that the agency was now doing negotiation and we had no parts in it. But like I explained to her, a lot of hands change up there at the agency, and if you leave, and if a person leaves and don't leave their spreadsheet of their roadmap behind, the vendors are the one left at a loss. That's why vendors should be included in the decision or in the process.
But that's not just included because just as you said, in the past, we negotiated with them, and just 4 years ago, it was the BVC and the committee finance committee who negotiated the contract. We negotiated the contract without the SLA, so it shouldn't be the other way around.
Yeah. So that last negotiation, like I was told by Mrs. Van Roach, that the agency was doing it and we were not included. And that's when everything went haywire.
I'll have to look into that. I don't have an answer to provide on that change at this moment, but I have made note of it to inquire about the change.
And
Thank you.
I'd like to add that at the time that we were told that we couldn't participate, like she said, that's when it seemed that our commission rate went back to the Stone Age, back in the Flintstone. 20 years prior, things went back to that time. And that doesn't seem to be policy, or forget what you said, that those rates are based on. But whatever they were based on at that time, they weren't. They were
See,
they were based on something
see,
else.
that's my concern because if there was a situation where there was no vendors, still, regardless, even without a vendor, all of those decisions should be made in the favor of the blind vendor. That's regulations That's Congress writing these things. And even if we wasn't there, the SLA or whoever negotiated should have negotiated with our concern as opposed to theirs, because as you know, we had a little discussion, and the third party is getting more of an advantage in these places than the blind vendors. And that's, I mean, the District of Columbia claims or think that it doesn't have to understand the intent of Congress, which it definitely does. That's ministerial, not discretionary, but at the very least, that's what they should want to do, to understand, to know how to do it correctly, so we wouldn't have these particular problems, because there's going to be somebody like me who digs deep down into it and see that this is not right. That should be done by the SLA or whoever their legal is. They should be able to do these things, because in legal training it teaches them to go there and find out the intent. There's a lot of Supreme Court cases where it's decided by the Supreme Court of the United States that the congressional intent as legislative intent is very, very important. And, I have a problem when I see that the SLA has negotiated. And, when I put in my grievance about this, it's because vendors came to me with it and wanted that to be, a better understanding of that. To begin with, how can these rates be different and change, and who negotiate, things like that. But even if we wasn't there or in the situation where we can't talk, we shouldn't have the third parties getting more of an advantage than the blind vendors.
Thank you. As I stated, I have made notes of these things, and will make sure that I speak with my leadership to understand when and why these changes kind of came into place, so that I can better work with you on this matter.
Right, because because you are our first liaison to upper management, so it's really value to us and important to us for you to have the same understanding that we have, because it doesn't stop with you, and we needed to go further than you. So, you are our first. You're the first person that we need to understand it the way that we do, or we understand it the way that you do, because that's our first step.
I agree, and I do understand. I cannot speak on to why it may have been one way and
Right,
suddenly
right.
change, and I don't want to misinform or say anything that may cause any misunderstanding. I don't want to misspeak. But I have made note as stated, because I am curious, and I will inquire about the changes and why.
And
Um,
may I make one other comment there, please?
yeah.
Okay. In the past, when we had our rate down as low as it is now, the agency pulled their levy back. Once we negotiated with the third parties and got our rate back up, that's when the agency went back up to 21%. So if we have our rate this low, isn't it fair to the vendors that the agency should pull down their levy rate?
Well, I have to inquire about the levy rate, but I do know at this time, the remainder of the fiscal year, the agency has removed levy payment. No one should be paying levy for the remainder of the fiscal year. So that should run through the end of September. There is no rate at this moment, but I can ask about the levy rate shifting with the third party rates. Is you saying it seems to change when the third party rates change?
Yes. So, like I say, in the past, when the third party rate was down low, the agency pulled their levy down. When we got the third party back up to 25% up in that area, then the levy went back up to 21%. But now the third party rate is down like 13% or whatever, but our levy rate is still 21%.
That's a new concern going forward since things have changed. That's just a new concern going forward. You just stated that no one is paying levy from now to September, and that's fine. But what do we do in September going forward? That's the reason for that particular question. So we might not have to address it in this meeting, but it's something to be addressed because September will be here before you know it.
Yes, agreed. Okay. Um, so that there was a topic number 3, a question from a vendor about eye acuity was brought. Is this something that the agency will be considering? So I am going to reach out to my agency partner that works with our policies to have them look at all of the current working and current active policies and procedures to see if there's anything that speaks on that matter. And if not, to see in which procedure or policy it would best fit to be added. Because I do feel like that is something that the agency and SLA will agree that if it's not in there, that is something that should be in there.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that beginning of that. What was that?
The question or the response?
The question.
Question 3 stated a question from a vendor about eye acuity was brought. Is this something that the agency will be considering? About like vision, how often the agency checks vision checks for vendors. I'm not sure if you all were on the email where that question was posed a few days ago.
Okay. I do remember it. Wow. Nobody choose to be blind. Give me my sight bike and y'all can have the program.
So is this something that the vendors would not like added to the procedures as far as vision checks? Are you opposed to implementing every so often having that added to any procedures?
Yeah, I
Because it
don't
may be
see
a
me.
conversation, if so, that we need to discuss with the policy committee, if that is something that we feel should be added or not, and where, if so.
Hi, Charlize, this is Shannon. So, I think historically, you know, from my understanding, usually, especially if they're coming through the VR side of things, there's a lot of assessment on the front end, to make sure that they meet criteria of, 20 over 200 with the best correction. And then they're able to meet criteria because what we'll have individuals that that come into the VR side, they're visually impaired, and they may not meet criteria, so that's not even worth us giving a referral. But because we're trying to assess for where their vision loss is, what are the limitations to that, to that individual with employment, and then we're also looking at what potential assistive technology they may need. So all that stuff is done as part of the VR case. If they meet criteria, they're going into the program. What we probably need to really kind of figure out is there is a threshold in order to come into the program for what that may look like, where they have to do with correction that we want to address. But I guess in my mind, I feel like it may be a quality assurance check to make sure, because we do have that language with correction in there. Do we want to set some type of criteria for individuals like every 3 to 4 years, like if there needs to be a sign up from a physician or optometrist to give an updated report so that we're kind of compliant to some degree with those that are in the program.
Can I make a statement?
Yeah.
I, okay. Here's the situation that, I mean, where I am on this is that there should be something where if a vendor have any procedure to make it better, because like Chevron states that the District of Columbia doesn't write the Randolph-Shepard regulations, and the federal government decides. So once they on disability and they come to this program, anytime they do anything to have something done, I believe that is the more appropriate time, unless the Randolph-Shepard regulations are changed. That's appropriate because that'd be, the integrity of the vendor to do. It's a requirement. If you had something done to correct your vision, then that is the time, and it hasn't been corrected. That is the time you should report. I mean, that would be the simplest and the easiest thing to do since, the Randolph Shepherd is not a District of Columbia or state written, document, program, regulation, or anything.
Yeah, and so based on what you're saying, Troy, what I hear is we probably should loop in Rachel to have some language. Now, what policy, I'm not sure, but I think what you're saying is like if there is a procedure that is to improve sight, then the person needs to be reevaluated to see if they meet criteria to be in the program.
No, I'm saying
To,
if they have it, if someone has that procedure, anybody who has a procedure, they know they had it. They know they were
yeah, that's
scheduled
what
to
I'm
have
saying.
it.
I'm saying the
Yeah.
same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just
Yes,
saying
ma'am.
I'm not sure what policy it would be a part of, but I'm curious on like consensus from the rest of the group. Like, is this a direction we want to go? And if so, then we can work with Rachel to see what policy there's going to be the best fit
Mhm.
to have some of that language in there. Because I'm in agreement. Like, it would not be fair. Like, we are happy that you improved your site, but
Yeah.
but you
My
need to
only
meet
thing is
criteria.
how
Mm.
with
Yeah.
HIPAA laws, you cannot, reach out to confirm these things, and you have to rely that the individual will be forthcoming with the information.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like, how do you enforce hoping that someone will remain honest and open about their personal health choices?
Well, and that's the other thing of that, Charlisa. I think we could put in language if they are forthcoming, but then if we also put the criteria like every 5 years, you need to confirm that eyesight hasn't changed because I'm pretty sure everyone's getting like eye exams, on a regular basis. So with that being said, if there has not been any change or correction, I think a simple like note or sign off from a doctor that, we're submitting to the program might be something we might want to explore for those hand or those couple of people that don't want to be forthright and give the goods on themselves.
Correct. So I think that's where the question was kind of that she was posing when she gave her feedback on that policy, is just kind of how is the agency going to kind of make sure that these things are being upheld, that, being in the program for such amount of time and never having to have submitted anything, and things can change, and we have no way of keeping up with that. And I think that was just a suggestion of how the agency is holding things accountable. So uh, my response was
Yeah.
going to be that, we work with Rachel to just look to see if anything actually already is stated in any of the procedures, and if not, seeing where something like that can be stated, because unless someone does not agree with the idea of us implementing that, it would be something that we can, pop into one of the procedures that we are working on. Okay. So I know we're down to our last 5 minutes, and there were two more topics submitted by Ms. Bolden. Why can't we collect commission from set aside businesses, i.e., Chick-fil-A and cafeterias? And I think this is similar, relating back to direct competition, possibly it might be what she's referring to. Um, and the
What was
regulation.
the second one? What was the second one question? I'm sorry. Since you
She's,
said it was two and we only have 5 minutes, what was the second, the next
the second
question?
one was Mr. Henderson has a concern about the current levy. So those were the last two submitted topics.
Well,
And
my concern with the levy was that um, I just think that it should have been discussed with the vendors at large, whether we wanted to go the rest of the year without paying levy or whether we would want to receive that income in our bank accounts because some of us make very little money that pays very little levy, and some of us make a lot of money that pays a lot of levy. And basically, it would have been fairer if we would have discussed it and we would have been able to decide as the vendors at large, as a whole, what it is we would like to have done with that situation instead of it just uh, basically being ordered that this is how it's going to be handled and whether it's fair to all or not. I just think that, it should have been discussed with the vendors at large.
okay. So we do have another vendors at large meeting scheduled coming up in July. It is something if you would like, I can add as an agenda item to discuss at the vendors at large meeting to
Hmm.
gauge how the majority is feeling about the levy payments. And if it is a majority rule, I can speak to see if that is something that can be turned back on for the remainder of the fiscal year or exactly how that process if that how simple of that process is of turning it on and off. But I can put that down
Okay.
as an agenda item for the July vendors at large meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Before that meeting, could we pose that question to the general population? So when we have that meeting in July, we've already come to some
Discuss.
consensus about it.
Okay, yeah, I can send them an email out about that to the vendors at large.
And the other
Right.
question, if we are able to move on from this last question, was about the not necessarily third party, but yeah, um, and it's about companies like Picnic that don't come in. They they're not direct competition because they're not in our building, but they are bringing their product to our building and dropping it off. And basically, it is robbing off of cross counter sales because my sales have diminished. But they're saying since it's done on the internet, then basically it's nothing that we can do. And Mr. Reese said, well, that's competition. So that's what I recognize. I have a website that I spend a lot of money for every year to try to, you know, recognize that competition and try to compete. But I'm being stopped from competing because of what Mr. Ambersola did when he was in Switzerland or the last vendor, whomever, because I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. But they're saying from what happened there before that um, it cannot use DoorDash or anybody. And I understand that because people that come in the building need to be badged. And if they're not badged, they can't be coming in and out, dropping off things. So I suggested that I wouldn't use DoorDash, that my employees would walk the the food to the curb where the car would sit and give the food to the driver or whomever is purchased, and no one would ever have to come into the building. But even though I've paid like $5,000 for this website, this ability, it has yet to be okayed. And it's been 6 months gone by, and I'm basically out of that money because I cannot compete because they can bring their food, Chick-fil-A, and drop it off at the officer's area, and people in the building come pick it up. But I can't take my inventory out the door to the curb and drop it off in the car. And it just seems that it's so very unfair to me being licensed to be in that building. And basically, I'm drastically losing I'm losing money drastically. So if food is in my building and picnic is in my building, cafeteria is in my building, but I'm receiving no commissions from any of the above, then now I have a way that I can compete, and I'm not being allowed to. So I would like and Buddha as well as Picnic is in a few of our locations, and we may not even, some of us may not even recognize it. And I'm just asking SLA to look into that. And if someone can do like I do, that I prepare hot food and basically I can carry it out to the curb, should be allowed to do that. If they can bring their food into my location, I should at least be able to take my food out to the curb and not be restricted. And I just like to say this one last thing. Them being able to bring their food onto my site, I can't take my food across the street to McDonald's and set up in front of McDonald's and sell my food in there. So why can people bring their food into my location, even though I know that's the way things are set up and it's okay, but I should be able to take my food out to the curb and not and no one has to be badged. No one has to come into the location. So if y'all could please look into that for me, I would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I
Very interesting.
made note of that. Okay, so we have made it through all five topics. It's now 12:03, so I do not have the time to continue with any further pending topics. But these are monthly meetings, so I will be sure to reach out ahead of next month's meeting for any topic ideas that you all may have for July. So I do thank you for your time today. I have made notes of lots of things that I plan to hopefully be able to provide updates and answers to before or by the next time we meet. I also will be sure to get the email out to the vendors at large regarding the levy payments ahead of the vendors at large meeting next month.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Ms. Payne.
Thank you all. Have a great remainder of your day.
And thank you,
All right.
fellow
You too. Thank you.
vendors. Right.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
All right. Bye.